Hey guys, well round one has come to an end, and what a round it was. It was very upsetting for a lot of tipsters out there. I had a pretty poor round for tipping actually. I got, I think, 5 out of 9 in the end, so wasn't particularly impressed with that, but overall there was 4 games out of 9 that were, if the side kicked the first 3 goals, they lost the game, so I found that quite amazing. Adelaide kicked the first 3, lost. Carlton kicked the first 3 and lost. Hawthorn kicked the first 3 and lost. And West Coast also kicked the first 3 goals and lost. So it was an interesting round for sure. It was also strange to see how fatigued and how cramped up players were getting too. I remember watching a few games this weekend and gee, yeah, it seemed like players were really struggling towards the end of the game, and there was also a few games in which players found it really tough to catch a breather because the play was just so quick and minimal ball ups and the game was just very open. So yeah, it was a very open round for round one. So I'll get into the summaries of each side and talk about the game. Obviously I'll be able to talk more about the games I did see. I don't actually have Foxtel, so I'll only really be able to talk about the games that are on Channel 7. So enjoy. The first game of the round was Adelaide and Essendon on the Friday night. This was actually last week, but the AFL decided to have it spread out over 2 weeks, which is not the greatest idea, but anyway. Yeah, a bit upsetting this one. I didn't really expect the Bombers to get over the line, and also by the amount they did win by. The Crows started off pretty well. They kicked the first 3 goals of the game. Tex Walker and Paul Pleasure got right into the mix of it. But then later on in the quarter, and especially in the second quarter, they really got on top, and Brent Stanton got them going, kicking the first goal for the Bombers. Tex was the first for the Crows. Basically after quarter time you just felt as though Adelaide were just hanging on and they needed to kick the next goal, otherwise they were pretty much almost beyond doubt of actually winning the game, and Essendon were just good enough, and they just had the answers to everything the Crows threw at them. So it was an amazing performance really, away from home, first game, and Adelaide Crows had a lot to deliver and obviously didn't quite deliver. It kind of showed their poor NAB Cup form through to round one, which is unusual considering the result from Brisbane and Western Bulldogs, but didn't quite apply to this game. So Nick Comer, also on debut, he played a decent game. He basically put the full stop in the last quarter, almost kicking the ceiling, you'd have to agree. And Ben Howlett was also an absolute star, kicking a career high 4 goals. He was very impressive to watch, and Joe Watson doing what he does best, 30 plus touches again. And he kicked the goal that just put the icing on the cake, and it was good night Irene after that. Well, it was beforehand, but just a very fitting finish. And then David Myers kicking a goal with a few seconds to go, and that just started the Bombers off in absolutely fantastic fashion. So it was the Bombers that got home in the end by 35 points, and I see it as a bit of an upset, but that was that match. The second game of the round was between West Coast and Fremantle, the good old Derby, or Derby, I'm not really sure how they pronounce it. They seem to use them interchangeably. So the Eagles kicked the first 3 goals. They were off to a flying start, but you guessed it, Fremantle got back and got home in the end. So they were quite exceptional basically after quarter time. Daniel Pearce was really good on debut for the Dockers. Well, he's played for Port Adelaide obviously, but his specific debut for Fremantle, kicking 2 goals, and boy, he was excited when he got those. It's like he'd never kicked a goal before, but yeah, it's good to see. It's good to see him get up and about. Nick Subin and Michael Walters were really good. They kicked the most goals on the ground. They kicked 3 each. And unfortunately Matthew Pavlich wasn't at his best. He was a bit wasteful. He just kicked the 3 behind, so wasn't quite a focal point up forward. And for West Coast, the most goals kicked for them was 2. LaCroix kicked 2. Kennedy kicked 2. And Cripps, also his debut for West Coast, he kicked 2. And also Ashton Hams. And poor Mark LaCroix, he's injured his arm, it's possibly broken. He'll be back in about another probably 4 to 6 weeks. So yeah, an absolute superstar of the game, and he just keeps getting injured. It's quite sad, really, because he's got such potential, and if he's on the park for the whole year, then the Eagles are definitely a chance at a flag. So I tipped the Doggers to win by 24 points. They won this game in the end by 28 points. The third game of the round was Richmond and Carlton, and what an exciting game this was to watch, especially towards the end of the game. The Tigers hadn't beaten the Blues since 2008, and well, they finally broke the hoodoo, and I wasn't too phased, 2-1 either way, but as long as it was a close contest, and it certainly was one of those. Even though they did break the hoodoo, I was a bit worried that maybe they'd break the hoodoo the Hawks have with the Cats, but luckily that wasn't the case. So it was Carlton that were off to the quick start, kicking the first 3 goals, and yeah, you guessed it, Richmond pegged back a few goals, and the scores were level by quarter time at 21 apiece. And basically after quarter time, it was all Richmond really until midway through the third quarter. They did get out to a 42-point lead, and that put them in a commanding position. At that stage, I was thinking, well, it could be Richmond seemed to have it in the bag, but Carlton almost are in a position to be on cue for a comeback, so I wasn't really too sure what to expect, but I'm glad the Blues did make a comeback and made it a bit more of a respectable contest. Chris Yarran was a bit stiff not to be able to finish it off for the Blues. He had 2 golden opportunities inside the last few minutes, and well, it would have won the game, but obviously I'm just going to put it down to fatigue that basically worked against him wanting to kick a goal, but that's just footy obviously, so that's how it happens. Tyrone Vicker is really good to watch. He was a great presence up forward, taking some good marks in the lead, and he was kicking pretty straight too. He ended up with 3 goals for the game. Jack Rewell, though, was only kept to 1 goal, so he was a bit quiet by his lofty standards. And I remember Dustin Martin's goal late in the second term, just before half-time, was an absolute gem. He was about 35 out, deep in the pocket, and just caressed it home from about 35 metres, and it was just an absolute beauty, probably one of the goals of the match. And Bryce Gibbs was also a standout for mine. He got 34 touches and almost willingly got the Blues over the line, but that didn't end up happening, and he also chipped in with 2 goals as well. For this game, I tipped Carlton to win by 16 points. It was the Tigers for the first time since 2008, beating the Blues by 5 points. The fourth game in the round was the Western Bulldogs up against the Lions, and this was a huge upset in the eyes of most AFL followers. I couldn't believe the result of this one either, because I actually had a multi-bet which involved this one, and I think it involved Adelaide and Carlton as well winning, but yeah, I wasn't off to a great start in terms of betting and also tipping. Everyone would have thought it would have been Brisbane that would have bullied the Bulldogs based off their magnificent NAB Cup form, but in the end it was the Bulldogs that decided to bully the Lions, so were quite simply outstanding. They kicked the first 6 goals of the game, and they never really looked like losing. The Lions never really looked like they were going to win the game, and never really challenged them, so it was quite an easy victory for the Dogs in the end. Daniel Jones, Syracuse, and Sean Higgins were really good up forward. They kicked 3 each for the Dogs. Bob Murphy was also terrific. He kicked 2 goals and kicked an absolute ripper banana on the boundary line. That was quite a highlight. And Jordan Roughhead was really good for the Dogs too. He kept Jonathan Brown to just 1 goal for the match. So Brownie certainly not showing his best form at Etihad. Brett Goods was very effective on his debut. He gathered 24 possessions, and they were at 91% efficiency, so he was very, very efficient off half-back, and quite valuable for the Dogs in terms of their victory. In this game, I tipped the Lions to win by 32 points. I thought they'd be too strong based on the NAB Cup form, but in the end, it was the Dogs getting home by 68 points. The 5th game of round 1, Sydney and GWS, so match of the round here. I'm only joking. Sydney were starting off pretty well. They kicked the first 4 goals, but then GWS decided to make a bit of a contest and they piled on the next 5 goals. So they took the lead at some stage, and they were really trying their best to be competitive against the reigning premiers. And another thing to note is the margin never really got beyond 5 goals, so it was really a good contest. Wooden Spooners up against the best in the competition. Well, only really the best by the premiership, but I'd argue the Hawks are probably the best, but I'm sure that will change in time. Kieran Jack was really impressive with his 25 disposals, and he also piled on 3 goals as well. And Jonathan Patton for GWS was pretty good as well up forward. He also kicked 3 goals and looked pretty strong up forward, so he was a good target. All in all, it's probably what everyone expected. I tipped Sydney to win by 70 points. At the end of the game, they had it in the bag by 30 points. The 6th game of the round was St Kilda and the Gold Coast at Metricon Stadium. This was an absolute cracker, and I'm absolutely glad I made the effort to watch this one. Gold Coast were $3.50 to 1, so I thought, I might put a $5 bet on, and surely enough, I got $17.50 back, so that was a pretty good win from my point of view. And Gold Coast, they got the first 3 goals of the game, 3 of the first 4 goals of the game, so it had a bright start. But then the Saints piled on 5 goals to just 2 behinds in the second term, and it looked as though Gold Coast were just cracking under pressure, and it looked as if the Saints were going to run all over them. However, that didn't end up happening. It was going to be a huge test for them because there have been times in the past where Gold Coast have led against quality sides at half-time, and then they've just gone absolutely nowhere in the second half and just been run over the top. But they kept pegging the Saints, and they just kept having a go. And it was just amazing to watch how quickly the game was being played and the fatigue the players were getting, and players cramping up. It was quite amazing. It was unstoppable. And speaking of unstoppable, well, Gary Ablett, the maestro, he was just an absolute magician in the second half. He gathered 34 disposals for the match, and he kicked 4 second half goals, so he was really the man that won him the match. He was just an absolute superstar. We all know he's a great player, but he just keeps continuing consistent form and just showing why he's the best in the competition. I really liked Rory Thompson's performance on Nick Riewoldt. He was really good, keeping him to just 2 goals and minimising his normal influence, and it was great to watch. It was a good one-on-one battle. Geary was pretty good off half-back. He got 28 disposals, and Armitage looked pretty dangerous too for the Saints. He got 25 touches, and he also snagged a goal as well. And Malera was also really dangerous up forward for the Saints. He kicked 3 goals and pretty much the leading goal kicker for the game. So for this game, I tipped the Saints to win by 26 points. However, it was Gold Coast in the end, upsetting the Saints at home, winning by 13 points. The 7th game of round 1 was Melbourne and Port Adelaide at the MCG, and this is a pretty disappointing performance from the Demons. They managed just 1 goal after half-time and had a pretty demoralising scoreline as it was, and just absolutely not good for them and not good for their supporters. Jack Viney was really their only highlight of the day on his debut. He managed to get 22 possessions, and 16 of those were contested, and I think that's probably a record for the most number of contested possessions by a player on their debut. Jay Schultz played a terrific game. He booted 4 goals and took a contender for Mark of the Year. It was an absolutely fantastic mark on the goal line. He actually thought it went over, and well, when I saw it, I thought it did too. But no, they paid it, and good on the umpires for paying it. Monfrey's also fitted in quite nicely, coming over for the Bombers, so his debut for Port, he chimed in with 3 goals, and Paul Stewart was good as well, and he kicked 3 goals as well. Brad Ebert was also fantastic, gathering 30 touches and also taking 12 marks. So after round 1, Port you wouldn't believe it, are on top of the ladder, off to an absolute flying start. No one expected them to beat the Demons by the amount they did. I tipped Port to beat them by just 6 points, but in the end, Port absolutely killed them by 79 points. The second last game of the round was Collingwood and North Melbourne. This was a really good game of footy. It was one of those games where I thought it could go either way, and sure enough it did. The lead changed about 12 times in the first half, so it was quite a tough contest, especially in the first half. The Roos got to within 10 points with a couple of minutes to play in the final term, but Collingwood were good enough to get the ball to Brent McCaffrey, and he kicked the ceiling goal, put the cream on the cake if you like, and that pretty much set Collingwood up for the win. Andrew Swallow was instrumental for the Roos. He gathered 34 disposals. Dane Swan was just fantastic, as he is week in, week out. He collected 31 possessions and took 10 marks and also kicked a goal. Quinton Lynch on his debut for Collingwood over from West Coast. He kicked 2 goals, did his job. The Pies also had 3 debutants in Sam Dwyer, Jack Frost and Josh Thomas, and they all played nicely. They filled in their role and did a good job of it. For this game I tipped Collingwood to win by 20 points. It was nearly that. Collingwood in the end won by 16 points. The last match of the round was match of the round, Geelong and Hawthorn. It certainly did not disappoint. Well, I think the end result may have been a bit disappointing, maybe for Hawthorn fans, certainly not for the Cats fans. 10 in a row since 2008 Grand Final, the Hawks just haven't been able to get over the line against the Cats. I reckon it's really starting to get to them, although I'm sure it already has, but it's just something they can't quite get over. It's just an amazing winning streak and rivalry these two sides have. I couldn't really believe the result myself because we looked just dead before half time. Hawthorn just looked like they were dominating play, and luckily those 2 goals against the run of play to Travis Varco and Tommy Hawkins certainly opted out and made the margin look a bit more respectable at half time. And after half time was just mostly one way and led by the Cat skipper Joel Selwood, who was just quite simply outstanding. He basically willed us back into the contest, and 33 disposals certainly doesn't hurt doing that. He also kicked a crucial goal that I think he kicked the first goal of the third quarter, which really got us right back into the contest. So he was really good there, and just led in terrific fashion. Hawthorn, they really did have most of the play on their terms. They just weren't quite efficient enough going forward. They just didn't quite capitalise on the opportunities, and had they put that scoreboard pressure early on, really would have put the Cats in a tight spot. And long story short, if they can kick straight, they can pretty much win, but they just can't seem to get their kicking boots on. Tommy Lonergan was pretty good against Buddy Franklin, keeping him just to 2 goals, and it was a good contest. But in saying that, no one on the ground kicked more than 2 goals for the entire match, so that was quite an entertaining stat. I was really impressed with Andrew Mackey's performance. He was outstanding. He got 25 touches and took 9 marks and a couple of really crucial marks in the final term, which was proved to be invaluable, really. And he also kicked a crucial goal in the third quarter. I don't know what it is, but he just always kicks a goal when we need one. It's like he's got some kind of timer saying, yep, time to kick a goal, and it was an absolute ripper from 60 metres. And yeah, they put us 7 points up at that stage, so that was a very handy goal. Sam Mitchell was a tireless worker. He gathered 37 disposals. Decent stats, but I'm pretty sure would have rathered the win, but obviously not going the Hawks' way. The Cats did get out to a 20-point lead in the final term. It looked just about done and dusted. Well, it wasn't really done and dusted until the final siren. The Hawks got 2 goals reasonably quickly. Savage got one, and Luke Bruce had a chance to make the margin. I think it would have been a couple of points or 1 point with a minute and a half to play, but he just couldn't quite nail it, and he'd be kicking himself after that. I tipped the Cats to win this one by 3 points, and in this clash they won by 7 points, so just a bit more. So that's my summary for round 1. It was a very upsetting round, as I said. I look forward to the next round, as I'm sure all of you are. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.